love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, then all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, will never be the same ever again.
Hello and welcome to another SDAQ&A. I am your host for today, Peter Dixon. And how was your weekend? What did you guys get up to? Let me know in the comments. Did you go to church on Saturday or Sunday? What was your experience like? Tell me all in the comments. Those listening on the podcast, if you are listening to season 2, which is slowly being uploaded as we speak, This is me speaking from 2025. You have been listening to programs from 2020. And today we are replaying from season 2 an interview I did with John Carter, Pastor John Carter. And this series was all about Des Ford and Glacier View. And it was a fascinating series. We did 86 interviews in that season. And boy, I learned so much about the whole Glacier View and scenario. And in doing so, I thought I knew a lot already. I learned so much more about the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So here we are, SDAQ&A, a former Adventist looking in from the outside, revealing Adventism, one interview, one conversation at a time. So this was season 2, episode 26. John Carter, he and I chatted for a good 10 minutes before we went live. And I've got to say, he's got a very good sense of humor. He and I were laughing a lot. Some people have said that he put Des down. They heard him put Des down at some public locations, was disparaging of Des Ford. I didn't get that sense from this program. And I think, as Stephen Beagles has said in the comments, that this man would be considered a gospel Adventist. Stephen Beagles has just written, John Carter is one of my favorite speakers. He is a gospel Adventist. Again, as always, I am super keen to hear what you guys have to say in the comments. In fact, the more you like and subscribe and comment, the better everything is for the show. Don't forget, as I just said, the liking and the subscribing. Lean forward. I'm going to see the buttons that you've pressed soon over there on YouTube. We're being joined today by Voice, SDA People's Voice, another group that I founded many years ago. And of course, into SDA Q&A Facebook group, the private group, and 2 channels, our special Des Ford Season 2 channel on YouTube and our normal YouTube channel, SDA Q&A. So 4 platforms today. And I will be checking the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you, everyone, for your support last week. I was able to raise a couple of $100, which was fantastic. I try and put at least 10 to 15 hours a week into SDA Q&A. I love it. I would do it for nothing. But I do have to put a roof over the head for my daughters and food on the table. And it's fast becoming my second career, and I love every minute of it. So thanks for being a part of the journey. And if you'd like to support me, there's my PayPal down the bottom there, paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music. Well, without further ado, we will get on with the program. And at the end, I think Gillian is away today, so I won't be able to have a debrief with her, but hopefully she watches later and gets to enjoy it and share her comments as well. And good to see everyone in the chat as well. It's great. Steve Beagles writes, this channel is kind of like pro wrestling. Well, with that, we will go back in time. And here is my interview in 2020 with Pastor John Carter, Seventh-day Adventist evangelist extraordinaire. I just ran to the kitchen to get some water and I'm out of breath.
Well, if Des were around, he'd be speaking seriously.
I know.
Because, any reason I've survived so long is because Des taught me the virtue of walking and jogging.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I should do these interviews with a head attachment, phone here, go Zoom live while I'm walking.
If Des were here today, he'd say, let's go for a walk.
Yeah.
And that's not a walk, it's like a marathon.
Mm. when I did the interview with him 2 or 3 years ago for the first 3 interviews on the podcast were with Des.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd just come from like a 2.5 hour walk along the beach up there.
That'll be, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's officially do our welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to SDA&A. I'm Peter Dixon, and today I'm joined by the celebrated TV evangelist, John Carter. Good to have you here, John.
Mm-hmm.
Great to have you here. Really
Thank
look
you.
forward to this. So, yeah, just the podcast runs separately to what we're doing here. This is the live video that goes to our special little Facebook family group. It's a private group.
Yep.
But later on, we'll be exposing you to the world with YouTube and, of course, the podcast. We've had a great little chat before coming on air.
We should have just had that because that was, we thought that was all right, didn't we?
It was good. I'd like you to share that little story while I get my breath back. Share the Des Ford Harley story.
You want to hear that story again?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, in my last year at Avondale College, this is going back, about 200 years, but I had been selling books around Western New South Wales in my last vacation. And I had this big old Harley Davidson that my father had graciously given to me. It was bright red. The brethren in South New South Wales called it the Red Dragon. Anyhow, it was a 7.9 Harley. Had a big bucket seat.
Nice.
A great bike. There's nothing much better, Peter, than riding down a country road, especially at 7 o'clock in the morning, when the birds are being frightened out of the bushes by the thump, 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 thump of the Harley between your legs, and the wind is blowing through your hair, and you've got your goggles on, and, it's a great experience. I loved my Harley Davidson. This is my Harley jacket, not the original one, of course. When Des saw the Harley Davidson, he said he wanted it. He said, I've got a family, and he said, I've got children, and I want to get out into the fresh air. Avondale in those days was not fresh enough. Can you believe it? Avondale, which seemed to be 1 million miles from nowhere, on a path that was crossed, say, by folks that are lost.
Out in the bush and dirt roads.
On McGuinness McGee had a shanty, the great poem.
Yeah.
Now, McGuinness McGee has been mated JP, the song. So Des said, I need to get my family out into the fresh air. The only place that had fresher air than Avondale College in those days was Antarctica. But he never knew this. And so Des and I agreed upon a miserable sum of money. And I can remember his opening up his paycheck and giving me his whole paycheck. For a theology teacher at Avondale College, that was not a lot of money. And so I sold him my Harley. And then I went out. He said, everybody can't sit on the Harley. I said, oh, big news, eh? And so he said, can I get a sidecar? And so I think we put an advertisement in the paper or something. I don't know how we did it so long ago. And I went out to Toronto, to the lakes. It was Toronto. I can see the place. Isn't this amazing?
Yeah.
I can see the trees. I can see the house. And underneath the house was a motorbike exactly the same.
Wow.
Exactly the same, with a beautiful sidecar. And so we got the college truck to come out, and I got the sidecar off this Harley, and I put it onto my Harley, and that's how Desmond Ford became the owner of a Harley Davidson 7.9 model, big Harley with the big bucket seat and this great sidecar.
Wow.
He'd take his family out riding in on this motorbike and in the sidecar.
And you got yourself another Harley.
Yeah, but no, we gave that to Des also because he paid the £5 for the. If you were to buy that thing today, it'd be thousands and thousands.
I know.
I mean,
especially red ones.
If you took this thing over to America and took it to Rick's thing, the pawn shop, It'd be worth tens of thousands, a Harley like that.
Yeah, incredible.
I can remember on one occasion, I showed Des, this is how you write it. I taught him for days and days how to write it. But Des had many, many good theological ideas, but he had no ideas at all about mechanics. I mean, zero. Zilch. One day I was studying in the dorm up on the 3rd floor, and I heard a voice, John. I look out the window, there's Dr. Ford. He says, the Harley's broken down. Oh, I said, it's broken down, Des? He said, yes, it won't go. He said, can you come? He said, I've got so-and-so here with his little car. We went and got in this funny little car. We went out, I think they call the Wattigans or something.
Yes,
I don't know, some little mountains out from Currumbong.
Yep.
We went up in the mountains, and there was my Harley, now Des's Harley.
Oh.
And I said, it won't go? He said, no, it won't go. I said, then tell me what the problem is. He said, it'll go down hills, but won't go up hills. I said, that's the problem? He said, go down hills, won't go up hills. Well, I said, let's see how much petrol it's got. He took the cap off, looked in. It had this much petrol. And so what happened was when it went downhill, the petrol ran forward and there was a little pipe there, and the pipe went down into the carburetor. But when it went up hills, the petrol ran down to the back. I said, now, Des, it's my fault because I told you how to run this motorbike and you had to do all these other things. I don't think I told you it was a perpetual machine motion. I don't think I told a perpetual motion machine.
Yeah.
So I said, you got to put petrol in it. Oh, he said, okay, I'll remember that. So that was Des.
Oh, I love it.
You know, deep thoughts in theology, but not exactly a person you'd send to the moon to fix the spacecraft.
I love it. And you were saying that may have been the beginning of the end, not Daniel and Revelation, but the...
Yeah, I think that's where Des got off the track. As soon as he became one of those wild colonial boys and started to think different thoughts, you know. Of course, I'm being facetious.
It's all your fault.
Des was a very likable, very lovable person. And I spent a lot of time with him. I knew him for... close to 60 years.
Yeah.
From my early college days when he came back to do his BA, and we were put in BA Arc together. And I'm really responsible for Des getting his PhD.
Tell us about it.
And a lot of people don't know this.
No.
Now, this has never been published in the Review or Spectrum or any of these other magazines. But Des didn't have a chance of passing BA Art. He couldn't draw to save his soul. And so he said to me, do you think you could help me with this drawing here? So I used to help Des with the drawings. And in later years, he'd say to me, with a wink, he'd say, remember, BA Art. Because if he hadn't passed art under Mr. Maury Kennedy, he would not have got his BA, and he would have been sent to Timbuktu or something.
So because of
As
you...
it was, he became a great theologian.
Because of you, he did his preliminary studies,
well, you know,
went on to great things.
We don't like to take credit where credit shouldn't be taken, and we don't like to accept responsibility for our sins. But I think the Harley and BA Art had something to do with it. Des would say so.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. And I can see here, Jill concurs that, he didn't have that mechanic ability.
Yeah, I don't know if Jill knows about the Harley, but anyhow...
She might be able to do a bit of digging and find out what happened to it.
I wish I knew where the old Harley was, because it would be worth its weight in gold. But another thing, too, it proves the providence of God that Des didn't kill himself in it running off the road or something. Shows the providence and the mercy of God.
Yes, yes. God had his hand over him.
Well, Des was the only guy who could get in a motor car and take his hands off the steering wheel and turn to the audience in the back seat and explain to them the mysteries of some prophetic interpretation. So that shows the ministry of angels.
Yes, and the vehicle kept going straight on.
Yeah, it's a miracle. Nothing else explains it.
Until Glacier View.
Well, no, I don't think I have no really. I have no psychic. I have no special insight into the ministry of angels at Glacier.
Yeah. Now, John, tell us about your family background, and we want to find out a little bit about your wife and how you kind of all work as a team. And
Well, my wife is a super.
I believe your son is a cameraman too.
No, he's not. He's a TV producer.
Oh, wow.
And he has on his team some of the guys from Hollywood who are a part of the Academy and choose the Academy Award winners.
Wow.
And so he has a great television crew of about 15 people. Most of these people are not members of the Adventist Church, but they're all Christians, they're evangelicals, but 2 or 3 of them are members of the Hollywood Academy. And they're the ones who choose the Academy Awards. And so that's what David does. And David also, by his own choice, is a missionary to India, where he goes a couple of times a year to teach and to get our television programs on Indian television, which in itself is a small miracle in a Hindu country. But getting back to Beverly, Beverly has been a super wife. I don't say this to embarrass her, but extremely talented. Some of my best ideas have come from Beverly. The idea here in Southern California and in Texas to do television and to buy television equipment came from Beverly, and to get a regular professional television crew, which is as good as you'll find anywhere, and to put our programs on television, which now goes around the world. Those ideas came from Beverly. And until relatively recent times, when we pastored a big church in Southern California, Beverly would give a presentation every time we did television. And so Beverly is loved by lots and lots of folks over here. But Beverly also has had a ministry for orphans in Russia and Ukraine. We've been to Russia around 50 times, in Siberia. And whenever we've gone to Russia, Beverly's gone to orphanages and helped them get equipment for children, including the children of Chernobyl. So she's been a super pastor's wife. Then I was going to say I, but I guess it's we. We have 2 daughters. One is an intensive care nurse working now for COVID patients in San Francisco.
Wow. Very
Very dangerous job. And another daughter up there who is a psychologist who works for deprived children who are sexually abused. So I'm proud of my kids. They all have hearts for caring for people, though none of them would wish to be called religious.
I like that.
Yeah, well, they like it too. They wouldn't want people to think they were religious.
Yeah.
But in their own way, they follow the teachings of Christ.
Yeah, I like that. I think we should be a little more focused on humanity and not religion anyway.
Well, as Des would say, and we all loved Des, and Beverly and I loved him, and we look forward to seeing him again soon, but Des would say, almost all man-made religion is bad. All man-made religion is bad. But I think he said, what he said was this, I think, almost all organized religion is bad. All man-made religion is bad, but almost all organized religion is bad. Now there's an almost.
Yeah.
Because organized religion in itself is not bad. But in the world today, almost all organized religion is pretty nasty.
Yeah.
As you can see from the religious right here in the United States of America today, which has turned millions away from God and from Christ. So my kids who work in San Francisco, who go out on street protests to protest discrimination, and who are like Julie, who with her husband, he's an anesthesiologist, but Julie is right on the front lines dealing with COVID-19 patients under terrible circumstances, where they run out of masks in American hospitals, where now today it is a terrible, terrible situation. Today, up to today, 127,000 Americans have died from COVID-19. And today there were another 41,000 people infected with COVID-19. And Dr. Fauci, one of the world's eminent doctors in this area, says it appears that soon in America we'll have 100,000 infections a day. And so the doctors and the nurses are on the front lines, and they're heroes, and they're putting their lives on the line. And I'm glad to have two members of my family that are on the front lines.
You'd be very proud of them.
And I'm concerned for them.
Yeah, you'd be very proud of them.
I am proud of them.
Yeah. Tell us about your own family background. Were you born Adventist? Where did you grow up?
No. My father was a Roman Catholic, an Irish Roman Catholic. My mother was an Australian with an English background, sort of Protestant, who didn't go to church either, Anglican. And many, many, many years ago, after the Second World War, some years after the Second World War, a great American evangelist came to Australia by the name of Clifford Reeves. Clifford Reeves. I met his son a number of years ago. He was a pastor here. And Clifford Reeves ran what we Aussies call a mission. In America, they often call it an effort.
Oh, yeah.
Because for them, it must be an effort. Imagine calling preaching the gospel an effort. What are you doing? I'm running an effort. I mean, how sad. Where's the good news of the gospel? But Clifford Reeves came and ran a mission. And my mother went to that mission and became an Adventist, but not a Christian. No knowledge at all of the gospel of Christ.
Yeah.
And so for most of her life, my mother had, I would think, no real knowledge of the gospel. But later on in her life, and I think I may have helped in this a little bit, my mother came to start to see the gleams of the morning about the gospel. And my father came to one of my meetings, and when I made an appeal, my father put up his hand. And my father became an Adventist, and I believe an Adventist Christian. And so I think, by the grace of God, I will see them again. So I wasn't brought up in what you'd call a Christian home. I was brought up for a long time in a good fighting Adventist home. Then I went to Avondale College, where your father, I think your father in that year was the assistant preceptor.
Yep.
And I found Christ at Avondale College. Like Paul met Christ on the road to Damascus, a dramatic conversion.
What year was that?
Oh, that was about 1743. That was when your father was a young man and you were not even a gleam in your father's eye. That was in the year AD, Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord, 1956. 56,
yeah. And tell us about this road to Damascus experience you had at Avondale, and tell us about some of the people that influenced, helped you get there.
Now, what I'm saying now, I can't speak about Avondale today because I haven't been there for many years. I've been back to, I think I've been back to one gathering, after They have a thing where they come back from the year they graduate.
I was there that year that you were there. And I remember a really wonderful thing you did. You had a book that you'd written at the time, and you gave everybody a copy.
No, I didn't write that book. That was a book that was written about me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there was a book.
Yeah, there's a big book
with a picture of you on it.
Publishing company.
So
After that, I think they almost went broke. But besides that, I was asked to be the speaker for the class of 1960.
Yes.
I think. I didn't graduate until 1961, but I went back for that, and that's 10 years ago.
Mm.
And I think, and I've been back for a couple of big rallies at the village church in the last few years, and I went back for at his request to take Graham Bradford's funeral.
Yes.
That was in the Avondale Cemetery, and then a special service in the Avondale Church, the college church. And so that's a little preamble. You know, I love Avondale, but I don't know much about it today. But I do know when I went there, the Spirit of God was in the place.
Yeah.
It was a powerhouse for Christ and his truth. And I heard great Bible preaching. I heard an English preacher by the name of Pastor Ron Vince preach a sermon on the God-filled blank. It's a pretty good title after so many years. The God-filled blank. And he said, in every person there's an emptiness. It's a blank. And as St. Augustine said, our souls are made for God, and they cannot rest until they rest in him. So he spoke about this. And I said, I'm the guy with the emptiness inside. I just turned 17 years of age. Went to college when I was 16, just turned 17. And through the ministry of another student, Tom Ludowisi, Dr. Tom Ludowisi, I found Christ, or better still, Christ found me. And I was born again and filled with joy and full of glory. I felt that God had reached out and actually touched me. I could tell you stories about this, and I'm not a charismatic, but I felt the hand of God in a marvelous way. And then I think it was in the year 1958, Des came back to finish his BA. And that's when we did BA art together under Mr. Maury Kennedy. And I did his paintings for him.
Did Maury ever find out?
Oh, Maury encouraged me to do it because Maury was saying, you know, we're helping each other here. And I wasn't doing anything illegal. Des wasn't doing anything illegal. But Maury recognized that miracles sometimes need a little bit of human help. And Des may have been a theologian, but he certainly wasn't a Michelangelo.
In a different way. Metaphorically he was.
Yeah, yes, he was. Yes, he was.
And what are some of your memories of Des that year, as far as, you know, theological memories? And
well, I don't have any theological memories when he came in
Bible discussions,
because he was only a young pastor, and he wasn't what should I say? He wasn't a shining star in the church, except that he had one or two very successful debates, and they had seen some glimpses of genius in him. And then, of course, he went off to this great country of the United States, went to Andrews and did his MA. He did his MA on, I think he did it. I'm trying to think hard now because I studied it. I think he did it on the possibility of Antiochus Epiphanes in Daniel 8. I think something like this. And then after that, after he got his MA in about 6 months or something, he shot off down the road to the great University of Michigan, or Michigan State University, I think. There are two, University of Michigan, Michigan State University. I've been on both their campuses to take a meeting. Des did his PhD on the rhetoric of the Apostle Paul. And I've read that also.
Mm.
One should have been given a PhD to read it.
It was quite involved, was it?
Yeah, somewhat. In it, Des had to defend his thesis that the vocal cords were not the product of the evolutionary process. And then he came back to Avondale College when I was just got off my Harley Davidson after this great time selling books around Western New South Wales, possibly the greatest experience of my life.
Mm.
When I put on 14 pounds or 6 or 7 kilos from the great generosity of the Aussie farmer, and everybody bought my books. And I would ride up on the great Harley thumping and sell the books, and I'd stay with farmers every night. So when I got back to Avondale, Des had just arrived.
Mm.
I remember going into my first class with Des on biblical theology.
So he's now a lecturer. And
he's back with his PhD.
And you're back as a student.
Yeah, I'm back as a humble student. And Desmond Ford has come back with his doctorate from Michigan State University. Now, these are big universities.
Mm.
I think Michigan State University today, when I was there a few years ago to give a talk, I think the student body, I'm trying to remember, I think it was 80,000 or something.
Mm.
They have a big campus hospital, it's one of America's great hospitals. I mean, these folks have some great universities.
Mm.
And so I started in with biblical theology with Des. And without question, as I studied with him that year, it seemed as though the windows of heaven opened up. Des was very, very gifted. And we loved him because he was such a nice guy.
Mm.
He's very different. He wouldn't say, come to dinner or come to tea. He'd say, come to breakfast.
Yeah.
At 6:30 in the morning. Now, we love Des, but you got to say that's a bit odd. Come to breakfast. And then you got to eat Des's food. And Des had his own way of cooking stuff. And Des was never unsure about anything. The way he cooked it was the way it was done. But Des he's a great guy. We loved him very much. And then I also did with him in my last year, the art of preaching. I can remember Des saying, because I had to preach a sermon on the new birth, John chapter 3. He said, you seem to be amused all the way through the talk that we needed to be born again. He said, what's funny about this topic? But Des told me I should continue on, and he felt that God one day would use me. And so I came to love Des and appreciate him. And when I got to Texas after many years ago, more than 30 years ago, I left Australia after I'd been pastor at Wahroonga Church, which I felt was a great and marvelous church. I had a great experience as pastor at Wahroonga Church, with hundreds of young people coming to the meetings. I mean, hundreds. And having to bring in extra chairs and fill up the choir loft and everything, with young people coming in to hear the word preached.
Mm.
But when we got to Texas, the word was out that I was Desmond Ford's friend.
Oh, yes.
And so Bill May, who had a bit of a name as being a bit of a CB, but Bill wasn't a CB. One great thing about America is this, that there are not too many theologians. It's very difficult to have a theological discussion in America. Pardon my saying this.
Mm.
And I love my American brothers and sisters. But I remember the conference president said to me, brother, can we have a talk with you? They put me on the Texas committee. They said, we need to have a talk with you because the brethren are concerned that you're friends with Des Ford.
Wow.
Now, is it true? I thought I was going to say, oh, no, this is a false. I said, of course it's true. They said, it's true. I said, of course it's true. And I said to Bill May, the president, and if you ever get kicked out, Bill, if I'm your friend, if they ever fire you as the president, I'll still be your friend then too. He said, you will be? I said, of course I will. And that prophecy came to pass because he was kicked out.
Really?
And he came to me and attended my church, and he said, you were my friend back then, and you're still my friend. I said, don't you folks have any understanding of this? And he said, I think we Texans do better than some of the people up in New England where they're pretty stodgy. But pardon my saying that because I've got donors up in New England, so I apologize for that. But they're more conservative, very conservative up in New England. The Texans are not so conservative. The Texans, very much like Australians, generous. You know what they think. They're pretty straight shooters. They shoot first, like the Australians, and they ask questions later. They like leather jackets, they like motorbikes, and they like boots. So we got on straight away. But I said, no, Des was my friend before he got fired, and he's my friend after he's fired, and he'll be my friend until his dying day or my dying day.
Mm.
And I said, I agree with Des Ford on the gospel.
Mm.
I said, you do, but he teaches the Jesuit doctrine. I said, no. His doctrine is the opposite of the Jesuit doctrine. I think that probably you with your perfection teach the Jesuit doctrine.
Mm.
They said, you do? I said, here are some articles I've written on it. And they took it and they said, well, this is very, very good. And so, now I was proud to be Des's friend. And Des said to me when it came up to the committee time to fire him, and I was on that committee, he said, John, don't put your neck out for me. I said, what do you take me for? I'll do what I think is right. And so I voted against firing him for a strong ethical reason. I've regretted some things. I've never regretted that.
Mm.
My viewpoint is I have a great theologian friend here who in America, and he's a very good friend. He's famous. We both agree on this, that unity is not uniformity, and it's not conformity either.
Yeah, exactly.
And so in our church today, there are many, many people who think that when a church leader says jump, you've got to say how high.
Mm.
So I believe in unity in the body of Christ, but I don't believe in conformity or uniformity.
Mm.
I believe in thinking for myself, so help me God.
I like that.
Glad you do.
I want to come back to...
Finally met somebody who does.
Yeah. I want to come back to some more of that later because I want to get your opinions. You can let this percolate in the back of your mind. I want to talk about the compliance document later.
Percolate off and have dinner soon, but anyhow.
Yeah. Are you contracted for 2.5 hours?
Not 2.5 hours. Keep going.
I want to come back to compliance document. I want to come back to that committee as well a little bit and just dig a bit deeper into that. But before that, I love how you're talking about the late 50s when you're at Avondale, and my parents have talked about this too, that it was a very special time. Like
great.
Wednesday night prayer meetings, Friday Vespers, and there was an electricity in the air.
Friday nights were the best in the world.
Yeah, with the singing, the preaching. There was real positive focus going on.
Yeah, terrific.
And I kind of want you to... When was that time that you were taken aside by that conference president? What year was that roughly?
I got a call after I was pastor of Borunga. I knew that the time had come basically for me to move on.
Mm.
Now, I'm an Aussie through and through. I think, but maybe not so. No, I am. I'm an Australian, but I have American citizenship too. So I have dual citizenship. But I agree with Dr. Bill Johnson, who wrote an article on the death of Des Ford. It was published in Spectrum. When Dr. Bill Johnson wrote it, I sort of took slight offense, and I wrote a little article in response. But Bill was right. He said that politics in Australia are very bloody things. Knock down and drag out. I think, I say this as an Australian, Australians have some very wonderful, wonderful characteristics. But forcing everybody into one mold is not a good Australian characteristic. In fact, it goes against the grain of many Australians.
Yeah.
I mean, for heaven's sake, we come from convicts, a lot of us. Graham Bradford used to boast to me all the time, I'm descended from convicts. I'd say to Graham, you don't have to tell me. I can tell. I said, you not only are you descended from a convict, Graham, I think you probably are still. But Graham and I were the closest friends.
Yeah.
But I seem to think that if it had been left to the Americans after Glacier View, Des would have been allowed to stay on. But I think it became the shootout at the old OK Corral. And so Des disagrees with the church on a date and a few other things. But, you know, Des was prepared to go along, I believe, with the consensus document. You know about the consensus document? Have you read it?
I haven't read it, but I know it's got 20 points, and I've got the summary in my head.
There's two documents. There's the consensus document,
and then the little 10-pointer that followed.
Well, the consensus document was written by Bill Johnson and some other really good theologians. It's a very balanced document. Now it says, for instance, the expression within the veil in the book of Hebrews. Now, this was approved by all of these guys at Glacier View. Neil Wilson and all the, as the Australians say, all the heavies.
Yeah.
So it says that as the high priest went into the most holy place on the Day of Atonement, so Christ went within the veil. And it quotes the book of Hebrews. Now, I don't think the church had ever said that before. And so Des agreed on that. Neil Wilson congratulated him, was happy, and this is where it should have ended. Des should have been, I think, free to go and continue his ministry and stay off controversial topics. And the controversial part was a very small part of it. But they should have united around the consensus document, and they agreed to do this. But then, as Bill Johnson says, they brought in this other thing, which was a very rigorous, hard document.
Wasn't it Neil that brought in the other document and kind of manipulated the 5 or 6 people like Norm Young and the others to present a deeper...
I can't say, but I do know when Des was fired when I was on the committee, it wasn't because of the consensus document.
No, it was because of the 10-point document.
Now, I know the consensus document. I've read it many, many times. And I think with Bill Johnson, it's a very good document. Des thought it was a very good document.
Yeah.
Now, it certainly didn't agree with Des on everything. I would not think.
No.
But it didn't have to.
No, he said he could live with it.
Yes, he said he could live with it. And I think this was an opportunity to unite. As a pastor, I believe in unity in the body of Christ. I don't believe in the shootout of the OK Corral. But I think the church in Australia became so polarized. I was running a big campaign in the city of Melbourne, in the Dallas Brooks, and it was not being blessed, it was being greatly blessed. We had thousands of people coming. and we're talking about not members of the church, thousands of people, Roman Catholics, the works. The place was filled, and there was a spirit of glory in the air. I had the best mission team I think I've ever had anywhere in the world. Great pastors. I mean, I'm telling you, you wouldn't find them anywhere else in the world as good. They said to me, we want you to go up because you're on the division committee, and tell them, don't fire Des. Let us have harmony and let us have pastoral responsibility. So I went up as the representative of the ministry from Melbourne.
To this is now post Glacier View.
Yes, this is when Des is getting fired.
Yeah. And what was the committee called?
The Australasian Division Committee. Or the South Pacific Division Committee.
And the focus of that meeting was to decide whether he's fired or not.
Not really. The focus of that committee was to rubber stamp that he should be fired.
Right.
No,
right.
there was discussion.
Yeah.
A number of people gave excellent speeches, but the feeling was, no, Des doesn't follow these points.
And you're saying now the 10 points, not the 20.
Yeah, I think so. The consensus document was never, I don't believe it was ever put forward. Now, you know, we're going back many, many years.
Before we dig into that part of it, I'm just interested to know if he agreed with it and the 10-point document statement came along during that same Glacier
and wasn't
week,
voted.
Glacier View week.
It wasn't voted.
No. It's largely agreed that it was Neil Wilson that made sure that that 10-point statement came in.
I don't know. The person who would know better than anybody would be Dr. Bill Johnson. Now,
yeah, I'm pretty sure his comment, because we've interviewed him as well.
Bill Johnson is truly a scholar and a gentleman.
Yeah.
He's a scholar and a gentleman. Bill was concerned because he felt they had the consensus document. It was voted by the whole lot. And then this other document is brought in. It's not even voted, but it's used to hang Des at Wurrunga.
Yeah. But in many ways, it was, like you said, a rubber stamping of it. His fate was already chosen.
So much because there was some discussion. There were some of us who opposed his firing, and this is one reason I came to America. Because after that, I ran a big campaign mission in the Sydney Opera House, and then in the concert hall. It lasted for 26 weeks, I think.
Yeah, I went to one of those too.
We ran in. Then I was the pastor of Wurrunga Church, and in those days, Peter, it was a great church.
Yeah.
There was no room in the church, packed to the doors. People.
I went to your opera house one too, one of the nights, or several of the nights actually. It was fantastic.
Well, you know, it was history. The Sydney Opera House.
Yeah, amazing. Incredible.
And we had, for the opening of the Sydney Opera House meetings, the largest crowds in the history of the Sydney Opera House. And so today I meet lots and lots of people, particularly pastors, and they look at me strangely and they say, but of course you know evangelism doesn't work. To which I respond and say, well, that's probably true for you.
Yeah, exactly.
But it doesn't mean it doesn't work, because I have, by the grace of God, in Russia, we probably saw the largest crowds of atheists attending religious meetings anywhere in the world in history. In 2,000 years of Christianity. People say that can't be so. No, it is so.
It's demonstrable.
The Russian government were so amazed that they sent a television crew and they shot the series or part. Then they did a primetime special on Russian television from coast to coast, set to the music of the Russian Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
Saying, and they called it The Coming of John the Baptist. I mean, a bit amazing, isn't it?
It's incredible.
So I meet people in the West who say it doesn't work. Well, they just haven't seen the power of God.
Yeah, that's because you're being your own person and you're able to to go, well, people are telling me I shouldn't or I can't, and you do it, and I respect that.
It was God's time. It was his appointing. It
Yeah.
had nothing much to do with me. I was lucky enough, and the word luck is not a good word, but I was, if I say fortunate enough, there's no difference, fortune, but I was blessed to be in the right place at the right time. And so
I think, and I'm not taking the divine part from it, but I think one of the things as humans we need to do is have a discipline to reject the compulsions of other people to stop us hearing that call.
Of course. And
so, you know,
in our church
you've got
today,
to
there is
respect to that.
a dreadful negativism that says it can't be done. And this is a part of the culture. And to a great extent, I say it sadly, it's a part of the culture in the Adventist church today. They say it can't be done. Now, we ran a series of meetings downtown Los Angeles, which is the hardest place in the world, except New York. And we hired a theater that seated 6,600. And we opened up there. Los Angeles is where you got the freeways. We started with 4 sessions and was packed. So we had 25,000 people downtown. And this went on for weeks, packed. So, you know, I know it can be done.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is this. One of the reasons I possibly left Australia after what the glory we saw at Wurrunga was because of a growing sentiment that says it can't be done. Now, there was one great thing about Desmond Ford, a number of great things, but Des was very determined. And if Des thought something was right, even if he was out on a few points, Des would die for it. So, you know, that's why I have always respected and admired Des, because he had the guts of his theological convictions. Yeah. He was not a wimp. Yeah. He was not a reed waving in the wind.
Yeah. I like that. And you don't have to, and he would be the first to say it's not about being right, but it's standing up for your right to speak your rightness, what you believe is rightness.
Well, I wouldn't be so charitable, because Des really thought he was right. But however, the genius of Desmond Ford, you know, I was studying Hebrews 9 with Desmond Ford before most folks were even born. In end of 1961, we all had to prepare a dissertation on the book of Hebrews, Hebrews 9. When I read Hebrews and he told me there were certain theological problems there, I couldn't see any theological problems. I was so theologically illiterate. I was in the same stage as most people. These expressions within the veil and the holiest of all, and all of this. So I studied those under Des, and I was mystified and studied it intensely until the seminary extension school. And then Des was one of the teachers, as well as Siegfried Horn. Now, 2 great teachers. No greater teacher anywhere in the world than Dr. Siegfried Horn. Professor Albright said his greatest archaeological discovery was Siegfried Horn. And Albright was possibly the greatest biblical archaeologist of the 20th century. I had the privilege of studying under Siegfried Horn. Des passed out a single little piece of paper that said, give the theological connotations of the eschatological connotations of Daniel 8:14 in light of the Day of Atonement. Now, goodness me. Now, some of my dear colleagues who hadn't had my background with Des sat there and they said, we don't know what he's even talking about. I knew exactly what he was talking about, and I wrote for 2 or 3 hours. So I understood where Des was going, and I understood what he was trying to do. I understood the problems he was grappling with, but over and beyond those problems, because ultimately, in my humble opinion, some differences in prophetic interpretation don't matter a hill of beans.
Mm.
You know, who cares? I mean, I was having dinner in Atlanta with one of the vice presidents of the North American division. And what I'm going to say here is not going to please anybody. It won't please Des' strongest supporters, and it won't please his detractors. So I've usually been on nobody's side, but I've been Des' friend. And this vice president said to me, tell me, he said, I've known you now for years. And he said, can I ask you a question? He said, I think you'll tell me the truth, won't you? I said, oh, I think probably. He said, what's the difference between Des Ford as far as latter-day events? Basically, what's the big difference? So there was a napkin there. I got the napkin. I got a pen. I wrote this. Well, Des Ford, we believe, Adventists believe, that the judgment started at the end of 2,300 days. They believe in the U-Day principle. It started, as Siegfried Horn pointed out, in 457 BC, with the going forth of the creed, all the rest of it, and it finished in 1844, and that's when the pre-Advent judgment started. Okay, said the Vice President of North American Division. What does Des believe? Well, I said, Des believes in the pre-Advent judgment, but he puts it at the close of probation. He said, no, there's got to be a lot more to it. I said, well, yeah, really, there could be a lot more to it. But I said, that's making it simple. It's the place where you put the judgment, because we believe in the judgment. And he said, but Des doesn't believe in the judgment. I said, no. Des believes in the judgment. He believes in the pre-Advent judgment. But it's not a long process. It happens at the close of probation. But then he said to me, looking like an owl, we were eating in a pizza place where Des would never have eaten. He said to me, there was much ado about nothing. I said, I think it was. He said, well, what? But Des preached a different gospel. I said, have you heard me preach? Yeah. I said, have you heard me preach on the gospel? That we're saved by grace, through faith, that not of ourselves, that justification is not the making, but it's the declaration that the filthy sinner is righteous, not because he really is, but because of the merits of Christ. He said, but Des wouldn't believe that. Des didn't believe in the 10 Commandments of the law. He did away with it. I said, no, they're all lies. What you've heard me preach on the gospel is heart and soul of Des's theology. And I can introduce you to numerous theologians, even in the Adventist church, who believe exactly the same as what Desmond Ford teaches. And so, well, his assessment was, and this doesn't please anybody, of course, if it was a question over dates, then it was much ado about nothing. And, my work, Peter, is I'm living in a country now where 127,000 people have died. Another 41,000 people got the infection today. I've got an office up the road at Moore Park. When I went there today, everybody's wearing a mask. We can't talk to each other. After we turn any knob, we've got to wash it down, clean it down. There are people dying around us. Dr. Fauci says the number could go to hundreds of thousands who are dying. So I believe, very simple philosophy, I believe that the greatest need is to bring Christ to the lost. And there are lots of lost people around us. So I believe, and I believe that the church, to a great extent, has a caretaker ministry. Did you know that it has been said by Christianity, I think Christianity Today and some other journals, that the evangelical movement within the next few years is going to cease to exist. It's going to self-destruct because it's become so vacuous and so corrupt. So what the church needs, as Moody said, less dinners and get after sinners. I believe. Now, I had the privilege of baptizing Paul Mickelson. Have you heard of him?
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he was on the Billy Graham team. He used to play the organ with the big choirs and so forth. I baptized him. He became a part of my team. Came with me to Russia and Ukraine. He said, I've never seen anything in all my life like this, talking to atheists. He said, Billy would be proud of this. So I believe very much in the philosophy of some of the great preachers like HMS Richards, George Vanderman, who became my dear friend, Dr. Billy Graham, and others who believed, as Moody said, less dinners and get after sinners. And I believe that the gospel that Desmond taught is the true gospel that has in it the power of God for salvation. And I believe that in many Adventist churches, pardon my saying it, because I've been a pastor, people say you're an evangelist. No, I'm not an evangelist. I don't have enough money to be an evangelist. I'm a pastor, because when I run an evangelistic campaign, it may cost $1 million. I don't have that sort of money all the time, though people send it to me. But I believe that the gospel that Desmond Ford taught overshadowed everything else. And I believe that Desmond had the truth on the gospel. Though he was not a perfectionist and he wasn't a legalist.
Does
Did you ever hear
believing...
him preach?
Sorry?
Did you ever hear him, Des, preach on the gospel?
Yes.
Well, when Des was a young guy at Avondale, Des was like a machine gun. And every line of his utterances was pregnant with meaning. Isn't that a nice line? So Des was full of marvelous insights.
Yeah, I interviewed Ken Samples on the show, and he was a mentor and a protege, as you know, of Walter Martin. And
Ken Samples from Reasons to Believe.
Yes. Yeah,
Well, I know those guys. I have.
And he said that the gospel that he heard from Des and in Des's writings,
Yes,
and the big 1,000-page book that he wrote was the best presentation of the gospel he'd ever heard.
Look, I have interviewed Hugh Ross numerous occasions. The last 3 books that Hugh Ross, Reasons to Believe, has put out, he's asked me to put an endorsement in the front of the book. So they try to present Christian evidences. Brother Samples is a wonderful Christian. That whole group had my team to go down there to their place, and they put on a great lunch for us of celebration. And so we have a wonderful fellowship with those people. And so Des did not teach a schismatic doctrine. Des taught sola Christus, sola scriptura, sola gratia, sola fide, all of this stuff.
I think the importance of those dates, though, and understanding the judgment and the pre-Advent kind of viewpoint is important in that he was saying, let's have the judgment and the atonement at the cross. We don't need another 1844 representation of it. And great that providentially the Adventist Church came out of it. But imagine you've brought people into the church with your evangelical work, as you have, and they stumble across the great controversy, which is still a sanctioned production by the Adventist Church, and they read the Investigative Judgment chapter, and they freak out, and they call you and say, this is not the gospel you taught me. What's the real gospel here?
I think I have an answer for that. Now, this is certainly not going to please some of Des's supporters. So when I have been on committees and people have said and brought these things up to me, I haven't pleased anybody, but I'm not trying to. Now, I believe in the atonement at the cross. No question. Desmond Ford taught this. But Desmond Ford, and I know this better than just about anybody, Desmond Ford taught that the Day of Atonement had an eschatological application in the last times. Desmond Ford taught this. Desmond Ford taught that Daniel 8:14, the Day of Atonement, was fulfilled at the cross and consummated at the end of times. You can get this in his writings. I've walked 1,000,000 miles with Des discussing this. This is what I wrote in the seminary extension school. I was the only minister to get an A because I had studied this. And so Desmond Ford would point you to Revelation 15, Revelation 7, where the Day of Atonement is in focus. And it's not from the viewpoint of the cross. It's from the viewpoint of the end of time. So Desmond Ford said, and a lot of people haven't known what Des taught. Des Ford said that the book of Hebrews was written from the viewpoint of the cross, but the book of Revelation is written from the viewpoint of the very end of time. And so a person can believe in the judgment. I believe in the judgment. And just because the doctrine of the judgment is nowhere inimical with the doctrine of salvation by faith, with the gospel. Not at all. What we have today, Peter, in the world, is a Christian church out there that has become so slack and lawless and ungodly. As Des said, the doctrine of the judgment are like the flames under the cooking pot to burst open the shells of indifference. That's what Des said.
Mm.
So I don't go along with this argument at all that the doctrine of the judgment is...
But someone that you've brought into the church stumbles across the great controversy, investigative judgment. Do you say, well, I do support Ellen's view of the investigative judgment as taught in the great controversy book?
Well, firstly, when we talk about... I'm sure you've read George Knight's books, Prophets in Conflict. That's Ellen White and the Mormons. It's a new book that George has brought out. I consider George to be an outstanding, great historian and a great guy. I've interviewed him on my television program. Love George immensely. And then he wrote out another book too. I wrote another book, Ellen White's Afterlife. Ellen White's Afterlife. Have you read that book?
No.
Well, you ought to read that. That's a beauty.
Sounds interesting.
George gave me a copy of it. I think actually the people from Pacific Press sent me a complimentary copy at George's request. And then the Pacific Press, the guy in charge of Pacific Press, a wonderful, wonderful Christian, Dale Galucha, sent me the latest one by George on Prophets in Conflict. There are some things that we've got to come to grips with, and which I have. Ellen White is not our source of authority for doctrine. Do I believe in her prophetic ministry? Absolutely. Do I believe in the 1919 Bible Conference? Absolutely. I urge people to read this stuff. There are many people with opinions, but they've got no knowledge. So I believe that it's good to have opinions, but it's good if we have knowledge. George's books give a wonderful, wonderful background how Ellen White should be interpreted. Ellen White did not wish to be used as an historian or as an authority for the age of the earth or for how many rings around Saturn. No. She was a spiritual leader and she led a movement. But she didn't want her writings to be used to establish or defend doctrine. Now, if people haven't caught up with this, they're back in the Dark Ages. But this is the great theme of George Knight's books. Yeah. And this is the stuff he used to present at general conferences.
Yeah, and she ebbed and flowed, she changed her views. But if we're to believe that she had fairly direct communication from God and visions that confirmed the very unique nature of the investigative judgment as taught in the Great Controversy, surely there has to be credence given to that teaching.
I would urge everybody, rather than go down this rabbit hole, which I'd like to get the book, Ellen White's Afterlife. What a title.
It's interesting. Lance has just written to me here, Peter, I have sent you that book.
He has.
So I will read it. I will read it because we're interviewing George Knight next week.
Now look, in the book Great Controversy, in the original copy, Ellen White said something like this. Now I didn't know we were going to be talking about this, but she said, "The Roman Catholic Church is not Babylon. Full stop. Period." Now there was a guy, I think it was it Prescott? I think it was Professor Prescott. He said, "That's wrong. The Roman Catholic Church is Babylon. I can prove." He said, "That's what I've been teaching." "Oh, no," said the Holy Brethren. Ellen White says, "The Roman Catholic Church is not Babylon." And so after a few years, Ellen White, who did not claim infallibility, she sent out a book to all the brethren, including Professor Prescott. She said, "Read it through, and where it needs editing and changing, make the changes and send them back to me." Elder Prescott wrote, "The Roman Catholic Church is not Babylon alone."
Yeah.
Period. It represents also the apostate Protestant churches.
Mm.
In the book by George Knight, quoting Elder Daniels, this point comes up, and Prescott says, "For a long time in the church, I was unorthodox. And then because we changed this word in Great Controversy, I automatically became orthodox. And the rest were unorthodox." Now, one of the sad things today, Peter, and you're not like this, but one of the horribly sad things today in the church is that many, many people are not informed or misinformed.
Mm.
And so if somebody came to me and said, "This proves this doctrine of so-and-so in Great Controversy because Ellen White taught it," I would say to them, I have no question at all that God guided in the writing of this book for a certain purpose. But this book was not written to define doctrine. The Bible defines doctrine.
Mm.
And I would say to them, have you read, the Roman Catholic Church is not Babylon? And then it was changed. It's not Babylon alone.
Mm. Mm.
And then Ellen White said, now the man who knew more about this than anybody else was Elder Daniels.
Mm.
He said, we can't take these viewpoints of verbal inspiration, that Ellen White is the last word on doctrine and history and geography and chronology and everything else. He said, we can't take this. He said, I was there when the books were written. He said, she said after they discovered historical errors in her books, she said, well, why don't you fix it?
Mm.
She said, we got the best we could. And she had a little group of people who were putting these books together. So I would urge everybody to read George Knight's book on this. Mm. And we need to be intelligently informed and work out our ideas. So I would say to any person who came to me with quotes from Ellen White, yes, I accept the prophetic gift of Ellen White. I believe that God raised her up to do a special work, but I am a Protestant. Firstly, I'm a Christian, not a very good one, but I'm a Christian. But secondly, I'm a Protestant. Mm. And as a Protestant, I believe in sola scriptura. Mm. It's not what the hierarchy of the church says. Mm. It's not what some theologian says. Mm. It's not even what Ellen White says in Great Controversy. We need to study the scriptures and find out what the scriptures say. Mm. So I would bring people back to scripture.
Someone has just commented that they're impressed that not only are you an evangelist, but you are well read.
Oh, thank you.
Many aren't.
Well, that is true with anybody. That means church members.
That's what you're saying too. We often
and also administrators
opinions, but no knowledge. Yeah.
I can't help bringing the administrators. As Desmond Ford said about some people, he said they were overfed and underread. That's what one does. I said, Des, if you say things like that about some administrators who may have a few pounds, there's no wonder they get annoyed with me. He said, why would they get annoyed with me? I said, Des, you're saying they're overfed and underread. Can't you hear Des saying overfed and underread?
It's two double-barrel shotgun criticism.
And the point is, the stuff that came out of the barrels hit.
Yeah.
and they hurt.
Now, I've been to your the Opera House
Mhm.
programs. I've heard you speak once that time at college. I've heard Des speak the gospel a couple of times,
Yeah.
and I came away from your meetings going, "This guy is preaching the gospel."
Well, it all depends what meeting you came to.
Well, either way, I
You see, now,
saw the
now that would be
Bible.
why, Peter.
Either
I
way,
have I have a completely different philosophy to 99% of Adventists,
Mm.
whom I think have missed the bus.
Well, this is
But
what I'm about. This is what I'm about to say. So let me unpack what I'm
okay,
about to say. I hear your, and you will shift and ebb and flow and change your ideas. And as you read, you'll learn and you'll gain knowledge, and that'll affect the narrative of your preaching the gospel. What I'm saying is, I hear John Carter. I hear the gospel. Last year, I went to a Revelation seminar here in Newcastle. Young people taking it, middle-aged Adventist pastor leading it, and I heard the great controversy gospel, old school Adventist Revelation seminar type evangelical
really
program. And
based on ignorance.
but what I came away with thinking though is that I don't agree with that. I agree with the John Carter gospel. I don't agree with this, but I think this is the very DNA of Adventism. So I wonder, have you struggled presenting
Now,
the gospel within the Adventist framework? Does
let
it
me
hold you back?
let me not take too much credit, and let me tell you why. If you attended my early meetings in Russia, where I had the KGB coming,
Wow.
the KGB young men were acting as my deacons. This is true. The KGB chief and his colonels were coming. I don't set out to preach a blood red gospel. I start out to give them evidence why they can believe. And so I start out on archaeology and astronomy. That's why I've teamed up with a guy like Dr. Hugh Ross, the president of Reasons to Believe. I start out to give people reasons to believe. But then as we move along and the crowds continue to come with me, I introduce other truths, and I introduce the truth of the gospel. Now, when we went to Kiev, these stories are hard for Adventists to believe, but they're true. When we went to Kiev, we hired an auditorium, the biggest we get, that seated 9,000. But we could put 12,000 in it. We opened with 4 sessions, 48,000. But we had, from the first session alone, 100,000 people turned away. Now, our purpose in those meetings is to give people reasons why they can believe there's a God and he loves them. Before we got there, the Billy Graham team had come, but without Billy Graham, and they had opened in a stadium across from us, and they opened with 3,000 people. We opened with 50,000, and at least 100,000 turned away because we had a different approach. Therefore, in many societies, opening on a pure gospel theme is doomed to disaster. And this is where people have made a terrible shipwreck of evangelism.
Yeah.
Evangelism ought to be scratching where people are itching. But as an evangelistic campaign moves along, by the 4th night, I'm talking about the man who wrote his own life story before he was born. And one of the main parts of that is Christ on the cross. And I can remember one night in Russia pointing to a great painting I'd had done in Australia, huge thing, 40 feet across. Christ on the cross, bleeding. I turned to the Russians of atheists and communists, and I said, "This is your God, oh Russia." Now, these people had had their heads down, so depressed. Then I had an altar call, and 10,000 Russians came down the front, lifting their hands and weeping. So there's power in the preaching of the cross of Christ at the appropriate time. Many people don't know what the appropriate time is. But if people have if they're preaching a gospel that is not the Pauline gospel, the gospel of Romans 3, so forth, they really need, in a very, very kind way, to be taught the gospel, but not in a self-righteous way. And if young people are running a Revelation seminar, God bless them, they're trying. And just reading scripture in itself is edifying. But where Des helped me immensely, and helped many other people in Australia and America, Des was a very clear voice on the Pauline gospel of justification through faith. And that we didn't believe in perfectionism. You know, perfectionism is, Adventism has got a lot of perfectionists. And generally perfectionists are not very nice people, and they're not very happy people. They'll drive more people away from the church than a good evangelist can bring in 100 years. They can do that in a day. So perfectionism, all that sort of stuff, is a terrible religion. It's the religion of the Jesuits. You know, Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
They found these letters after she died.
Yeah.
And she had been suicidal, and she had considered committing suicide. And she said she'd never had one happy day.
No.
And she was terrified of God.
Yeah.
That's because of the theology that you've got to become good enough before you're justified.
And she almost relished the suffering, as that then brings her closer to God. Bring it on,
but,
because Jesus suffered too.
The difference between a declaration or making.
It's not the gospel, though, is what I'm saying.
No, the gospel is a declaration that the unworthy sinner stands righteous. It's a declaration. The other doctrine is that justification is a process of making you better and better and better until you're really good, and then you can get through the judgment because you're sinless. That's nonsense, the latter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm hearing what you're saying, and in some ways I can imagine you being involved in any denomination and almost sidetracking some of the doctrines and dogmas of that particular one, and still pointing people to the cross in any denomination. Why are you most proud of your Adventist connection? Is it because you were an Adventist at a young age, or do you think it is an effective vehicle?
As Desmond Ford said, and caused a lot of controversy over here in America, he said, I'm not a Seventh-day Adventist by birth. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist by choice. And when I cease to be a Seventh-day Adventist by choice, said Des, I will cease to be a Seventh-day Adventist. Des wrote a marvelous paper a number of years ago called, I think it was called His Vision for the Adventist Church, His Dream for the Adventist Church, or something like that. When people ask me my religion, I tell them this. What is your religion? I say, firstly, I'm a Christian. So I'm not a good one. I don't know any good ones, but I'm a Christian. I believe in Christ. I'm saved by grace. And then secondly, I'm a Protestant. Oh, you're a Protestant? Yeah, I'm a Protestant. I believe in the Bible and the Bible alone. Sola Scriptura, Sola Christus, Sola Gratia, Sola Fide. I know a little bit of Latin. And so I can roll these things. Oh, so you're a Protestant? Yes. So I believe in the Bible and Bible alone. And then thirdly, I'm an Adventist. I'm an Adventist because I believe in the law of God. Boy, that's needed today. Look over here in America where they're burning buildings down and doing dreadful things and closing down police forces. I believe in law. Here they to keep the commandments of God. So I believe in the commandments and the law. I believe in the soon return of Christ. Tremendous truth. I think the Sabbath is a tremendous gift that Adventists have received. The only commandment that points to the gospel is the Sabbath. That's what Des said over and over and over and over again. Des was great on the Sabbath. I believe in the truth of healthful living. Adventists have had a marvelous message of healthful living. That's why Des made it to 90 and why I'm still going strong at my age. Maybe not as strong as I'd like to go, but I'm still going. Bit like the Harley running on one cylinder now. So I believe that Adventism still has many marvelous things to offer. And there's another reason I'm an Adventist still.
Yeah.
I'm not a perfectionist. And people say, I've left the church. Why? Well, because I'm against perfectionism. Oh, so the church is not perfect enough for you. That's a bit stupid, isn't it? I'm not a perfectionist. I don't expect the Adventist church to be perfect because it's made up of people like me.
Now, I want to just do 3 little topics before we let you go. And what time is it there, by the way?
Oh, it's getting late. I'm going to run out of blood sugar. It's 7:25 in the evening.
Got a little snack. I've just got three things I want to cover.
Okay.
And I just want to highlight how appreciative I am of you taking this time, because a lot of questions I ask.
I'd do anything for Des.
Yeah.
Des has got me into more hot water because I've defended him.
Yeah.
Got me, but I knew Des. I wish that this thing had never happened. I wish Des had stayed in the church right to the end. I do. But all things work together for good.
What a powerful church it would have been if the likes of Des were as accepted as all of us,
Well, maybe, yes. But, I'm not a Calvinist, but I do believe that God has a plan from the days of eternity. And our plan is often not his plan. And his plan is sometimes very uncomfortable.
So, in my opinion,
3 points.
I'm not going to draw you out on it, but in my opinion, there's a fair bit of evidence that Neil Wilson last minute included these 10 points that Des wouldn't be able to, in all conscience, agree with. Regardless of that, we find ourselves at the committee that's going to put the rubber stamp on his dismissal. You're there. Can you just tell us a little bit about what the year was again, and what was the feeling of all present? What was the vibe?
We're going back a long time. I think this committee was in 1980, because I was in Melbourne and I flew up to represent the pastors, and I was on the division committee. They're not after that vote for long. Not after my vote. Soon I was off the committee.
That was it, yeah.
Yes, I know. I'd committed the unpardonable sin because I had not been a conformist.
So how many were on the committee?
Well, on the division committee, I don't remember now, but I think the division committee was about 50 people.
How many people?
Then they brought in about another 50 people.
And how many people voted like you, do you think?
I know, 4 of us.
Okay, so small number.
Yeah, I know.
Was there a kind of an aggression against Des? Was there a sense of we got to get rid of this guy?
I think it was. Now I don't wish to impute any bad motives. I think the brethren had good motives. Now we don't have to see the devil behind every bush. I think the brethren saw Des as attacking some of the doctrines of the church. And hey, I've just written a little book that nobody's read, just a little one we sent out to some of our supporters. It said, it's on the Christian's authority. And I talk about, is the General Conference our authority? No, it's not. Is so-and-so our authority? No, it's not. Is some conference committee? No, what is it? It's the Holy Spirit speaking through God's word. And then I quote Ellen White, and then I have these quotations where Ellen White says, I used to say the GC was God's highest authority on earth. Don't say this anymore. So I got this little book on authority. But in this little book, which talks also about the ordination of women in an offhanded way, I say this: when you join an organization, Peter, it's a bit hard for some of us thick-headed Aussies to understand. When you join an organization, you got to march in harmony with the drummer on the great essentials. Now, I run an organization. It's a non-profit organization. It's a religious organization. I had to get a little policy book. Goodness me, it's approved by the state of California, and we give tax-deductible receipts and all that stuff. So it's got to be very much above board. But you've got to have rules and regulations. Now, I'm not talking from my viewpoint so much now as this. But if I've got people on my team and they disagree with me on many things, I say, that's fine. You know, you can think those things, all right. You don't believe that the earth is there, that's all right. It's okay. We're big-hearted people here. But I'm only a little show. Now, I think Neil Wilson and Elder Parmenter thought that Des was going to wreck the church because of his perceived attack upon great controversy and other things. They said, we got to stop it. Now, maybe I would have handled it differently, but it's very easy to have to handle something if you're not handling it. So I don't think their motives were wrong. I didn't agree with what happened, and I made a speech to that extent. My speech was this. That I don't agree with Des on everything, but the main theme here is the gospel. And Des has preached it better than anybody else. And I think, this was my speech that almost pretty much did me in. I said, I think we ought to have a greater pastoral responsibility.
Yeah.
Towards Des and the young people and the pastors. When they're going to hear this, many are going to be discouraged and leave the church.
And they did.
They did by the droves.
Yeah.
That was my appeal.
Yeah.
My appeal was not for conformity, but let's give this a little time to work out.
Yeah.
I said, there's a little time to work this out. At that time, I didn't know too much about the consensus tape. I don't remember now. I may have, but that was my appeal.
Yeah.
And then the vote was taken. It was a secret ballot. And then the chairman, Pastor Parmenter, said, now we've done a secret ballot. We noticed that some have voted against the motion. Now we'd like everybody to vote for it so we can go out and tell the world it was unanimous. And the man sitting next to me, whose name was Bob Parr, the editor of the review, he said, and because the chairman said, now we want you to all stand up so we can say it's unanimous. Bob Parr said to me, I don't know about you, John, but he said, I'm never going to do that. So when they said opposed, 4 of us stood up.
Wow. Who were the other 2? You, Bob, and who else?
Bob Parr, me, Eric Magnuson, I think, and one other person. And Bob Parr got fired soon after as the editor of the review. Then he got fired as president of Sydney Conference. Eric Magnuson basically had to leave Avondale College. And I don't think Norm was there, but I don't know if Norm was on that committee or not. I don't think he was on the division committee. But there were 4 of us. And I did it as a sense of pastoral responsibility, because first and foremost, I'm a pastor and I think of young people. And I felt that there were some unseen voters there. I think there was a very legalistic, perfectionistic group in the church, and their tentacles had reached into that committee. And I was to feel their fury when I became pastor of Wahroonga Church, where they would come, stand outside the meeting and hold up signs trying to boycott my meetings. So I voted against that.
Someone has just written, was the other person Pastor Swanell?
Ray Swanell?
I'm not
I
sure.
don't remember.
Yeah.
But he was a great guy, really great guy, Dr. Swanell.
I applaud your integrity there, and I applaud your honesty with us today. I appreciate that very much. Did Parmenter or Tolhurst ever come to you one-on-one and kind of give you a little bit of a reprimand?
No. Now, you see, once again, I fit in. I don't seem to fit in too many places. I don't fit in with the left wingers or the right wingers.
I relate to that.
I'm an evangelical, and I think a lot of stuff that people fight over just ain't worth fighting over. Athol Tolhurst was a very dear friend of mine. I heard him criticized on many occasions. I knew Athol from the time when we worked together in South New South Wales Conference. I knew him and I loved him. Now, I know some of Des's friends thought Athol was like the Antichrist. No, Athol was an absolute born-again Christian, earnest child of God, but he loved the church a great deal, and he felt that Des was attacking the church. So Athol reacted. Athol became a member of my church at Wahroonga. Athol didn't always agree with everything I preached because my preaching did polarize the CBs. They would have hung me up to dry from the flagpole, but I tried to show them love and compassion because I believe that Christianity makes us nice people. If it makes us sour, critical, nasty old people, I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Amen.
And when I was the pastor of that church, we had at least 500 young people coming to church.
Yeah.
And before I got there, the church had had a terrible fight with the Sydney Adventist Hospital.
Yeah.
And it had insulted the leaders of the Adventist Hospital. So I made the chaplains assistant pastors to me. Tom Ludowisi, who led me to Christ, he was one of the pastors. I went out and I saw the leaders of the hospital, all came back to church with tears. They said, we've been treated so badly. They had been. Then I gave the hospitals a segment in the church service every week that they could talk about what the hospital was doing. We had 500 young people in church. I took them 1 year to Manila, took about 80 of them to Manila. Next year, and this was Beverly's idea.
And what year was this again? Your Wahroonga years?
84, 85.
Right.
And then we took them to Kingston, Jamaica. I'm talking about big campaigns. You know, the young people had never seen anything like it. They'd been told by their parents. And some of the fuddy-duddies, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So we take them to Kingston, Jamaica. We have 20,000 a night. But since then, we've had up to 150 and 200,000 people a night. But in some places, glory be to God, we've had the biggest audiences in the history of Christianity of those nations.
Yes.
In hundreds of thousands of people.
And what wonderful memories for the kids you took to be a part of it too.
Well, some of them became ministers and they never forgot it. They never, because some of them still contact me. In Manila, took them into the prison, took them into death row, where I preached to young men about to be executed and took them in and baptized them. Now, that's a lot. Now, some of these people who are all in theology, it'd be good if they did a bit of this. It'd get them out of their stuffiness, because too much theology makes you very stuffy. And then I went into a prison in this big prison, and the guards left us at the gates. They said, we can't come in with you. It's too dangerous. When I got in, there was blood all on the ground.
But off you go.
Where people were killed here.
Wow.
And we baptized hundreds of people in that prison. But the best baptism I think I've ever had was these young men about to be executed.
Yeah.
As terrorists. So we had a ministry like this for young people. One of the biggest compliments the young people of Wahroonga Church gave me, they officially presented it to me, was a big picture of a monkey. And it had my name on it, and under it said, our fearless leader. Then one of the biggest compliments was that the staff of the Adventist Hospital took me to dinner at the Sydney Opera House, because we brought unity and love. And so I'm against this dodgy, cold, pharisaical, only theology, and I'm right and you're wrong. I'm perfectly prepared to tell people I'm probably wrong I'm sure I'm wrong on many things and have been, but I'm not wrong about Jesus. I'm very dogmatic about that.
Yeah.
Now
my second last.
Yeah.
Just as a quick aside, are you on the church payroll now, or are you just fully independent ministry?
Fully independent. I get my credentials from the Pacific Union Conference.
Yeah.
How and why, I sometimes wonder. But I'm totally orthodox with...
Yeah.
And I was the preacher at the 1988 Minneapolis Conference. I mean, goodness me. Keynote speaker at the 1988 Minneapolis Conference. And they preached at the New Orleans
Yeah.
the New Orleans, as the Australians say, but the New Orleans
Yeah.
General Conference in the big Superdome. I preached there.
And you've been on 3ABN as well. I think you're embraced by a wide variety
We're
of
on
Adventists.
3ABN for 6 full hours a week, and we're probably the longest lasting program on 3ABN.
Yeah.
We're on 3ABN in Australia on Friday night, Sabbath morning, and Sabbath afternoon.
Mm.
And we get, for evangelism, people say, oh no, well, people have said to me, well, you know, you're done for now because you're running a sort of an independent ministry and nobody's paying you. How can you run these campaigns? Well, since I started this up in California, people have sent me at least $100 million. That's why we have accountants and we do it properly, and we have audits which are squeaky clean. But we have put millions and millions of dollars into evangelism. We have built more churches in Russia than the General Conference or any other organization combined.
Mm. Do they answer back through your independent ministry, or do they then you let them go and they answer to the church?
No, they don't answer to me. I don't run a church. When we baptize people, we try to teach them the gospel, and then we baptize them and we send them to Adventist churches.
Okay.
And sometimes we start up new Adventist churches.
Yeah. Yeah.
We start up evangelical new Adventist churches.
Yeah.
Because as Vadim Budov told me in Russia, if you send them to some of the old churches, they'll get picked to death by the hens.
Yeah, so that's a good idea to start.
Yeah, so, you know, this is because of the self-righteousness, and we are the only people, and if you don't see it my way, you're going to go to hell. I don't believe in any of that stuff.
Mm. And maybe it would be a very effective model for the actual church leaders to take. And that leads into my next question. Because,
I don't think they're going to ask me anytime soon.
Because people, they should say, yeah, you're allowed to have a church that's a bit more liberal, and you're allowed to have a church that's a bit more conservative. But they seem to be holding their mouths a little bit closed because of my next question.
Yes.
But before that next question, someone's just said, you guys could be twins with our...
Just tell him I take that as a personal insult, because I would never have long hair like that. I mean, my hair's got to stop here.
No, I think you need to keep it growing.
You know, I know what the Torah says, how long it can be.
You're following the Torah, yeah.
Yeah, and you.
I'm following the New Testament.
No, I'd be happy to work with you any day.
It'd be an honor. So with the compliance document, I think a lot of the leaders are too scared to say, yeah, why not have a little bit more of a liberal church here and a little bit more of a conservative church there? As an observation, what are your thoughts on the compliance document and how effective it will be? Because 6 unions have already been warned. The next step is reprimand. The next step is loss of job.
Yes, well, I agree with the church's leading historian from Andrews University, who's now retired, and probably the person who spoke at more general conferences than anybody else, and the most published author, Adventist author since Ellen White. You know of whom I'm speaking?
No.
That's George Knight.
I was going to say
George Knight is the most published Adventist author since Ellen White. He's had more influence in the Adventist church than anybody I think I know. I interviewed him for my television program.
Yeah, he's going to be on our show next week.
I think the world of George. Not only do I love him, because you've got to love your enemies, don't you? But I like George. And now that's true, you know. The Bible says love your enemies. So if you tell somebody you love them, they could be your enemies. But you don't like your enemies, and that's very important. But George wrote out a number of articles that I read that he sent to the union conference presidents. I mean, these things have been published. I don't know if Spectrum published them. I don't remember now. But I believe, as Graham Bradford did, in the concept of the Adventist church, the early Adventist church that was run by young people. you didn't have to be over 60 or 70 before you were considered worthy to speak. When I was on the division committee, more than 40 years ago, the division president told me, we put you on this committee, but we don't expect you're going to speak until we ask you to. I mean, that's really, really sad, and really maybe very Adventist today, but very non-Adventist. Because the Adventist church was started as a very open, a very free, investigative movement. It was even a charismatic movement. Read about Ellen White's involvement in the charismatic movement. Read George Knight on this. Staying up all night, studying the Bible, having visions and dreams. And I mean, goodness, that's so far removed from a stodgy church council today. So churches, as Robert Spangler pointed out to us at the seminary extension school, probably before you were born, he said a church starts out as a sect, and then very soon it becomes a church, and then it becomes a denomination, and then it becomes dictatorial and fossilized, and then it dies. And so I think the Adventist church is going through a phase today that Ellen White, now we quote Ellen White whenever we can find something that suits us, you see. If you want something to prove sinless perfectionism, you try to get something from Ellen White. If you want something on justification, you can get that's what people do. If you want something against the judgment, you get Ellen White. This is sad. This is really sad. It's a great abuse. It's not that Ellen White is wrong. It's that she is being grossly abused. And I believe we've come to the stage where we have become so staid and conservative, and now we're in the stage of becoming dictatorial. Now, I have a very, very interesting concept on this one. People say, well, look, oh, goodness, the worst thing that could happen to you would be to lose your church membership, Brother Carter, because if that happened, you'll be cast out of the kingdom. I've never heard so much twaddle. I mean, the Pope doesn't even say that today. He talks about the separated brethren. So the Pope is far more tolerant than some Adventist leaders. Now, some of the best people I've known have been Adventist leaders. They have. I've had conference presidents, that they weren't good to me. They were fantastic to me. But trying to get people to toe the line, and then you're going to be shamed, and you're going to be this, and you're going to be that, that to me makes me think the next thing is going to be the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah, well, even the wording of the second layer is not just reprimand, it's public reprimand.
No. Now,
That's in policy.
In my little booklet that nobody read, except Beverly, it talks about the Christian's authority. I believe that if people are a member of an organization, they ought to be in harmony with it. It's great principles. It's great goal. It's great mission. But that doesn't mean they can't think differently on some things. Now, I can assure you, without your asking me, there are things that I think different on the denomination. Why? Because I think for myself, and I read widely, and I've brushed shoulders with some very, very great scholars. So I know a lot of stuff. I'm not going to be browbeaten by anybody. There should be room in any church for diversity of opinion. So if I had in my church, which was a big church in a beautiful building, which we left a few years ago because the drive was getting too much for me. After driving 800,000 kilometers around Los Angeles, we moved out here. In my church, if somebody came to me and they said, look, we're not quite sure about this, done. I said, well, do you believe in this and this? Yes. Well, let's hang on to the great truths. You don't have to agree with me on everything. I gave a talk once in my church where I had an actual line. I had a line brought in. And I had him held between two big strong men. He's a full-size line. And I said to the two keepers holding this big chain, I said, can I pat him on the head? The keeper said, go ahead, but you probably lose your hand. But I gave a talk that day on why I didn't believe in evolution. I thought it was very, very, very good. Gave all the reasons why I didn't believe in evolution and how there are kinds, and that it's macroevolution's never been proven, microevolution. But there's no evidence that we came through the apes. I gave all this. Then after I gave this brilliant talk why I didn't believe in evolution, I got a letter from one of the church members castigating me for teaching evolution. So I talked to him. I said, he said, look, I'm sorry. He said, I'm really just an ignorant man. I said, no, I don't think you're ignorant. Just a bit. But he said, there's a lot of things I don't understand. I said, there's a lot of things none of us understand. We got to be tolerant with people. And if you want to split a church or a church, try starting a sort of an inquisition. That people are going to be publicly shamed and all of this stuff. And let me tell you something. If you do a lot of that, the only people who are going to stay are going to be conforming dummies.
Exactly. But this is what's happened, though. We've had 6 warned. If they don't come back the next time that the meetings are on, they will be publicly reprimanded. And then the next time is people shutting up and becoming dummies, like you say.
Well,
how do you stop this happening?
I don't think you can. I think only it's been approved by the World Church and all the rest of it. But people come to me and they say, well, of course, when the whole church agrees, or majority, that's the voice of God. I say, no, that's poppycock. No, that's just because a church organization says it is so doesn't make it so. That's what even the Catholic Church doesn't give me that ballyhoo. So I believe in conformity on the fundamentals. I believe in that. If you can't conform on those things, but a number of years ago, you couldn't get ordained if you had a beard. Now, then there came a time you couldn't get ordained if you had a beard. There's a time once you couldn't get ordained unless you had long hair, so you looked dignified. And then there was a time you couldn't get ordained unless you looked like a skinhead. As Murray Vanden said, there's a time when you couldn't get ordained unless your tie was this wide.
But when those are more superficial. When you can't be ordained based on your gender, and it becomes a compliant compliant point that you have to agree on, or you'll lose your job.
Well, of course, the problem is this. Now, I live in a radical part of the world because the North American division has gone against the General Conference. And a few miles from my home here in Westlake Village is Pacific Union Conference. They've gone against the General Conference too. Now, I have given a whole sermon on the ordination of women, but I couldn't put it on any Adventist network. They wouldn't play it. I didn't try to get it on any Adventist network because I didn't think it was worthwhile trying to polarize people. I think, you see, I have been to China. Yeah, my wife says, just go ahead and do it. And my wife is not a liberal. She's a godly woman. She believes in the ordination of women, and so do I, of course. I believe this. When I was in China, when I say China, I should have said Hong Kong. I was asked to address the pastors from the inland of China. What a privilege. They came to learn from me, for heaven's sake. When I listened to them, I wanted to learn from them. There's a beautiful young woman there. I said to her through the translator, you're a pastor? Yes. You been ordained? Yes. I said, praise God. All right. Pastor, how many church members do you look after? 30,000. That's in your church. Yeah, I have 2 assistants. These 2 beautiful young women.
Wow.
Young man comes to see me. What do you do? Almost said boy. He looked about 10. Young Chinese guy, probably 23 or 24. He said, please come and talk to my people. I said, how many young people do you look after? He said, 10,000. And so we won't ordain these women. Who cares? God's ordained them already.
Are they
And
officially
Chinese
ordained?
government has accepted it.
Is their ordination recognised by the GC?
No, but it's recognized by God.
So why aren't they being warned?
Well, I think the American church or the General Conference doesn't have any control, thank God, over the Chinese church.
Oh,
It's completely independent because the Chinese government says it is going to be so.
I see.
I believe in letting God let. Now, Paul says, can we forbid water that these Gentiles should be baptized? I say, can we forbid ordination that these women should be ordained? But I don't even believe in ordination as it is practiced by most Adventists.
No. I only believe in talking about ordination when it's used as a weapon.
You see, the word ordained is the Greek word is appoint. It's to appoint. He appointed 12 that they might be with him, that he might send them forth to preach.
Whereas Adventist leaders have used it as
a woman cannot be appointed and sent forth to preach. If you say that, you're almost committing the unpardonable sin.
Yeah. Ordination, the appointment of women, are separate to the way ordination is used as a separating suppression tool.
And the president of the European division said, what we do is more Catholic than Protestant. And he said exactly what I'm saying now, the appointing. But he said, I go along with it because I don't want to be different to the rest of the church. He said, I believe the church is wrong on this, but I will conform. So he's not going to get disciplined.
Who was that?
Well, I won't say his name.
No, sorry, I thought you had. Sorry.
No. A guy from Europe. He was the president. I don't know if he's still the president. Beverly says he's retired. But he said he believed in the ordination of women, but the church has spoken, so whatever the church says. I think it's very dangerous. I believe in George Knight. I don't believe in all of these disciplines and so forth to force conformity. I don't believe Christ is in it.
Are you worried that by saying that you might lose your 6 hours on 3ABN?
No, why should I worry about that? We pay to be on 3ABN. We buy time. 3ABN have been my very, very good, sincere friends. I'm good friends with Danny Shelton, all the people. I love them there. They don't agree with my stand on the ordination of women. I've told them what I believe. They don't agree with it. Have they got the right to have a different viewpoint to me? Absolutely.
Right.
They're sincere in what they believe. I know the women who on 3ABN, they don't believe it either. But I don't believe, having said this, Peter, I don't believe that women's ordination is a big enough issue to split the church. Christ is a big enough issue. The gospel is. And a woman today, if she wants to, can go out and preach the gospel, but she won't be called pastor. And I say, so what? When I was in Ukraine some years ago, and Beverly has spoken to huge groups of Russian people and preached to them. For heaven's sake, she was appointed by God to do this. The president was Pastor Murgar, who became my close friend, been in prison during the days of the communists because of his faith. His wife was an absolute saint. Now, I was running this great series in the great city of Kiev, which is one of the great cities of the world. Many soldiers came, and a colonel who was in charge of the troops from that part of the world and said to me through the translator, will you come out and bless my troops? I said, well, you think I'm like a priest? He said, yes, but better. I said, well, I guess I'll come out and bless them. So I came out. What I had to do, I had to stand up the front on the dais, and all the troops marched past with a big band, marching with their legs up like this, with jackboots. And I had to stand with the colonel and salute. I thought, if anybody in Australia sees me with this, they'll never forget. They'll laugh forever. So I'm standing there taking the salute. And then after that, the colonel said, now you must preach to them. I said, good-o, come on. So we go into this huge auditorium. I get up and preach to them for about an hour and a half. I preach on the fact that there's a creator. I preach on the fact that God came down in the person of Christ. I mean, I'm not even talking about astronomy, archaeology. I'm straight into it. Preach on the cross of Christ. I have an altar call. I'm the only minister who's ever been asked twice to preach to the KGB in Russia. I've preached to the KGB, thousands of them. I've got awards here on my wall from the leaders of the KGB. I've had altar calls to the KGB. I've almost been killed by the KGB, being crushed by people coming forward in altar calls. Are there pictures of this? Yes, of course there are pictures of this. But in Kiev, after I started preaching there to them, they said, we want more. What are we going to do? I said, well, we're going to get a lady to come and preach to you. I said, I believe that ladies can preach. Do you get it, guys? Yeah. See, I'm talking. So Mrs. Murgar comes. She goes every week and preaches the word of God to all these Ukrainian soldiers. We baptized in that campaign one of the audience there who came to my meetings, who was in charge of teaching atheism during the days of the Soviets. He taught Marxist atheism. He was a professor of it. Came to my meetings, heard the truth of the Bible and the truth of Christ. I baptized him. I've got a little cross he gave me from the leader, the man who taught atheism. People say evangelism doesn't work. How dumb they are. Doesn't work for them. Where have they been? Probably haven't been out of Woolloomooloo. But where God works, God can work. We need to step back and stop being such dummies and let God work. And our church system today is not set up to let God work. Our church system today is to set up to dictate to people and discipline the people. We need to let God work. We shouldn't be trying to bring uniformity and conformity. Now, so I believe that if God appoints a woman, you can forget about getting official approval from the church in Washington. But after listening to those Chinese pastors, they said to me, we want you to come and teach us. I said, no, my sweets, I want you to come and teach me. You've taught me more than anything. There are about a dozen women pastors. The women pastors carry the weight of the work in China, women pastors, not the men. We had the sweetest fellowship. I was touched by them. You know, I was overwhelmed by their kindness and their sincerity and being filled with the Spirit. So the church ought to say, we're going to let God work. And, you know, there comes a time when people start to think they're almost too big for God, and they're going to become little popes, and they're going to start to dictate. We ought to be very careful about that, because God is not dependent upon any committee or any organization to finish his work. It says in Romans, he will finish his work. King James Version, another translation. A short work will the Lord make upon the earth. God will do it. He's not dependent upon the Adventist church, upon you or me. And so, to answer your question about 3ABN, no, we have the greatest relationship. They know what I think and what I believe, and I've been on there longer than anybody else, and I think they respect me. They came with me to Russia. Let your audience know this, Peter. The biggest Protestant building in Russia was built and is owned by 3ABN. Bigger than the Pentecostals, yeah. Bigger than the Adventists, yeah. Bigger than everybody in the city of Nizhny Novgorod. It was founded after the great campaign in 92, where we baptized almost 3,000 souls. That campaign happened because Danny Shelton came to me and he said, I want to work with you. Let us be partners. He helped me raise the money. Nobody else helped me. I won't hear 3ABN criticized. They came to the aid and raised money. Dr. Julia Ukana was baptized. I baptized her. She's in charge of God's work of the great 3ABN television center in Nizhny Novgorod, the biggest show, Protestant show in Russia. I baptized her. She's the sister of Boris Nemtsov, who could have become the president. Have you heard of Nemtsov?
Yeah.
Nemtsov was my friend.
Well, it's been in the news recently.
Nemtsov become the president, but Yeltsin, after Yeltsin gave him the kiss of death and made him one of the speakers of the Duma, and then Putin came on the scene. But I explained the gospel to Boris and the truth of the separation of church and state. I've been to his palace. I have gone into his audience chamber where the Orthodox Church was waiting in their robes, and the whole cabinet of the Russians. And when I came, they stood to attention. They stood up to attention, a whole lot. I brought in my little team, including Danny Shelton. And we sat down. He said, now, what have you to tell us? And I sat opposite Boris, who became my friend. And I explained to him the great truths of democracy and freedom, separation of church and state, and the gospel, and the story of the Bible. And he said, I've never heard anything like this. I talked to him about 3 or 4 hours. And then when the meeting was finishing, a beautiful young woman came in. And he got up and he said, oh, Julia, my sister. She said, Boris, I've come with a message. She said, this man is from God. He says, why do you say that? Well, I had there a heap of letters that the Russians had written to me, this high. I gave them to the governor. She said, you'll see my letter there. I can see it on top. She said, I've gone to all of Pastor Carter's meetings. She said, when he preached on the Sabbath, I rebelled. I went home and prepared the meat. I prepared the meat. A bone went up my fingernail. She said, everywhere I went this week, I preached every night for 6 weeks. 2 or 3, up to 4 sessions a night in an auditorium seated 6,000. That's why the Russians said, this is the coming of John the Baptist. She said, my finger got festered. Everywhere I went, my finger said, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And so we baptized her, and she, with her team, whom we baptized every one of them. And this was a partnership with 3ABN and the Carter Report. Now, 3ABN gets criticism from the liberals and the conservatives. They're independent Christians. They're from Southern Illinois. I think they're very good people. They're my friends. Goodness me, they put up with me. So I believe very much in the gospel of tolerance and kindness. And you don't have to think everything that I think to get along with me. Yeah. And that's why Des and I got on well.
Yeah, I like it. And you've kind of possibly, I think, answered in our whole interview my last parting question.
Oh.
And just a quick thing about 3ABN, Danny Shelton came to Kurumbong a number of years ago, and I owned the music shop at the time.
Yeah.
And one of his representatives came in and said, look, we need a guitar. And so I loaned them my actual guitar.
Danny's good on it. Danny called me the other day for an hour and a half. We discussed some theological questions. But
well, he preached that weekend, and he used my guitar, and they had like 900 people turned up to the Memorial Church. And as a direct result, they raised, I think, $3.5 million and built the 3ABN Australian office, which is just 5 minutes down the road.
Well,
and they're lovely people, really lovely family kind of run business.
Yeah, I've been to 3ABN up there at least 40 times. I mean, it's a pain. I've got to drive to LAX, then I've got to fly to St. Louis, then I've got to get in a car and drive for hours. It's right out in the bush. It's a full day getting there and a full day getting back. And then I do a live television program. I don't have to agree with them on everything.
No.
I don't have to agree with them on women's ordination.
Yeah.
We agree on Christ and the heart of the three angels' messages. And on our television programs, we present many, many great truths. Hope Network wouldn't have the Carter Report. We were on for a while on Hope.
Interesting.
We were on Hope in America because people go to the GC and I'd be shouting down the halls of the GC. Hope would be on. I was on in Australia.
Yeah.
But they consider that I preach controversial topics such as believing that the papacy is in Bible prophecy. So Hope will not have me because they consider I'm a liberal. They won't have me because they believe that I believe too much in Protestantism.
How ironic, because of your support of people like Des and righteousness by faith and the more liberal
but hope is, we wish Hope well. There would be no Hope without 3ABN. It was because of 3ABN's influence that Hope got going. I wish Hope much success. I can only say nice things about them. And the person who runs Hope in Australia, Wayne Baum, he's the greatest saint.
Yeah.
I don't know a better person than Wayne Baum.
His wife
in charge of Hope.
His wife's amazing, and sorry, no, I misheard you there. Sorry, say that again. You're saying
Baum.
Lovely guy, lovely guy.
Carol, his wife.
Yeah.
They're remarkable. We work together in the Solomon Islands. They're tremendous people.
Yeah.
And so my approach is somewhat non-Seventh-day Adventist in some ways, because I don't demand perfection of everybody. I don't demand perfection of 3ABN. Fortunately, they don't demand it of me. I don't demand perfection of the General Conference or any of those people. I have found perfection in Christ. And I don't try to force everybody into my own mold. In other words, I am first and foremost a Christian, secondly a Protestant, and thirdly an Adventist. And some have said to me, well, then you can't be truly a Seventh-day Adventist. I said, no, that's what a true Adventist is.
Yeah.
Christian first, then Protestant, the Bible, not Ellen White, the Bible. And if you are a Christian first, and if you're a Protestant, and if you hold to the great tenets, the great fundamentals, and Adventists have got some wonderful, marvelous truths, and I'm proud of those truths. But I think we shouldn't think we're the only ones. I know we're not the only ones, because in America, I have received marvelous support from evangelicals across the board. Almost my whole television crew are evangelicals, and they hear me preach against the rapture, and Sabbath, all of this stuff I preach, and they could not be bigger supporters.
Yeah, they get
They
it.
look upon me as their pastor.
Yeah, they get it.
And then a person who's on my board, Willie Jordan, the Reverend Willie Jordan, one of the leading Baptist ministers in North America, is a lady, ordained Baptist minister, and she's on Billy Graham's board. Well, she was when Billy was alive, but on Billy Graham's board, and she's on my board. And she says, it's an honor for me to be on your board. Yeah. She's been with me to Russia. So God's got a big family.
Is the mainstream church worried, do you think, that all the donations are going to things like the John Carter Report, the 3ABN, Doug Batchelor's ministries, Light Bearers, the Incredible Journey?
I don't think they really care.
There's some indications that there's some, in our part of the world, that they're in some financial struggle.
I have no idea, but I do know Australians are great supporters of the Carter Report. I mean, we don't ask for money in Australia, but people send it to us. I mean, we have great supporters. Other day, I got a phone call from Pastor Harold Harker. Can you call Mrs. So-and-so? I called her up. She's an old lady, widow, sent 10,000. Now, these things are happening all the time. So we don't forbid God. We don't try to stop God. We let God be God. And I've discovered this, that the more generous we are, the more generous God is to me. So I have a philosophy with the Carter Report team members. We're better to them than any other organization can be. After a while, we give them motor cars. So because they're driving so much, we bless them, we help them, and God blesses us. We don't believe in stinginess and being mean. We believe we should help people. When we were in Russia, we had a policy that we would never say no to any person in need. That's a big commitment. I'd have people come to me saying, Kiev, my son's got to have a huge operation. Can you come and see him? So I go to the home. So why don't they have, we don't have the money. So I talk to the pastor. They have no money? No. Well, they got it now. We'll pay for it. You're going to pay for it? Yes, of course we'll pay for it. But why? What's the catch? Do you want pictures? No, we don't want pictures. It's more blessed to give than to receive. And so our policy is to bless people. We are sending down in El Salvador, where we ran a great campaign with 55,000 people a night, the biggest crowd in the history of that part of the world, of Inter-America, the biggest crowd, bigger than their football finals. Amazing. But we're sending a bunch of little kids to the Adventist school because they're too poor. We're paying for their uniforms and their shoes. People say, you know, what benefit? And of course, it's no, but we're helping them. Then the kids were so poor, I found out they've got to have uniforms. I said, we'll pay for the uniforms. Can you afford it? I said, of course we can.
Yeah.
We're millionaires. God blesses us. In India, where my son goes like a great martyr because he puts his life at risk, over there, and it's true, he goes with his life at risk. We've employing people over there in India, Indian pastor, his wife, others, and we're putting about 60 untouchable little girls through a Christian school. Otherwise, they're going to end up prostitutes. So when David goes over, they've got banners hanging from the roof of the school. Bless you, thank you. You know, is what we do. Besides preaching the gospel, we try to help people. But in Russia, we had a policy, and every Adventist minister we met in Russia in those days, we would give him, every minister we met, we'd give him a month's wages. What for? Well, isn't this going to make it easier for you? Here's a month's wages. You know, you got children sick. When we were over there a couple of years ago with Julia, we ran a small campaign because you're not allowed to run campaigns in Russia anymore, but we got permission from the Kremlin to run a campaign. I was on Russian television, speaking on Russian television every night. We had permission from the Kremlin, from Putin and co. And after we had done this at the Big 3 ABN Center, all these young people, all these girls, young women, when I say girls, you know, 25, 30, they're girls to me, all these young guys, I said to Julia, what do they need? Winter's, you know, snowing outside. I see they don't have good coats. She said, I know that we can't pay them enough for coats. What about boots? We can't pay them enough. We've got no money. I said, well, you got it now. Yeah, every girl here gets a new coat, a big coat. And every girl gets a beautiful pair of leather boots. And what do the guys need? Well, they're so skinny. Well, we'll get them big overcoats. We'll get them boots. So we gave that to all of those young people.
I love it. Yeah.
So, no, I can't stand stingy people. I can't stand the Pharisees. I can't stand tight people. Since we've had this philosophy, and since we've had COVID-19, when we, you know, we're producing two new programs every week here. without any people on the cameras. We've got them set.
Mm.
And they can do everything from the control room. So instead of having a crew of 20, I'm down to 5 people. Nobody in the room with me. Nobody. And they say the programs are very, very good. But during COVID, people told us, you're going to go broke. Nobody's going to send money. Our offerings have doubled. We're getting double offerings. But let me say to everybody, Peter, Des was not a conformist. Des didn't expect everybody to believe everything he taught, and I didn't. I disagreed with Des on some prophetic points. I didn't agree with Des on the 70 weeks. Graham Bradford and I spent hours talking with him on this, and we personally think that we won the argument. That's saying something with Des. So we didn't agree with Des on everything, but who cares? We agreed with him on Christ and the gospel, and that the Lord is coming soon.
Yeah.
That we're in the last days. There's going to be a resurrection, and the saints are going to go home to glory. Goodness me, if people can agree on this, anything else is somewhat of a bit of an obscenity.
Yeah. Look, that's what you've just said there is just fantastic, and certainly resonates with a lot of people that are watching as well.
I'm lit up in glory now.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, the lights
nice.
on.
I've been sitting here. The sun has gone down.
The sun was going down and you were shading.
The sun has gone down and my stomach is rumbling. And my super wife,
we're going to let you go.
Who's taken care of me all through these years, has told me that she's making some bean soup.
Oh, my favorite.
Lima bean soup and some bread from Trader Joe's. It's called Ezekiel bread. And I will go down.
Me hungry now.
And I'll have the repast of a king. And let me send my greetings to all the viewers, to Jill and all of Des's friends, and say this, that because of Christ and his love for us, in spite of our imperfections and our terrible lack of knowledge of theology, doesn't matter a great deal, we're going to be with Christ in paradise. And we believe with great confidence that we'll go walking with Des again. But this time, we'll probably be able to keep up. God bless you, Peter.
Hey, John, thank you so much. All my questions have been answered. And we wish you well and look forward to crossing paths with you again one day.
Let me say this to you, Peter. What we say at the close of every big altar call, when you've got, say, 10,000 people down the front weeping. And I've seen it in some places, 60,000 in an altar call. You know, I meet these silly people, they say, well, you know, that people think because they can't understand it, that's not right. That just shows that they're sort of dumb. I mean, that's not their fault that they're dumb. They just need to have some experience with God. But after a big altar call with 60 or 70,000 people down the front, Hindus and Muslims worshiping God, I say the prayer of Moses. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you peace this day and forevermore. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And thank you, John. Thank you to Beverly. And we look forward to crossing paths again one day.
Yeah. God bless you, Peter. I got a house out in Australia.
Ah, well, when you're over, let me know.
What do you do, Peter, for a living? What do you do?
I'm a musician.
Full-time musician?
Well, until COVID. All the gigs suddenly went, from here to Christmas, gone.
You folks have got it good in Australia. Here, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And we know people now who are dying around us and the hospital is getting filled up. We pray. We wanted to come back to Australia 3 months ago. You can't get back now.
No.
But we hope we can get back if this thing will only die down a bit. But it's not dying down. It's like a raging inferno.
Well, we're
Peter.
thinking of you guys.
God bless you, Peter.
Till next time.
Yeah, I'm going to turn off the lights. Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
And there we have it. We're back in 2025 now. And that was a very interesting interview there with Pastor John Carter. I've been sitting here reading your comments, dying to bring some of them up on the screen, but I thought I'll just let the episode speak for itself. Watching back to these programs, I left the church 9.5 years ago, and these interviews, season 2, the Des Ford Glacier View series, 85 in programs all up. Yes, I certainly have learned a lot, but I love watching them and just seeing and comparing what do I think now with what I thought then. And I certainly still can see this gospel Adventism that John speaks of, that George Knight speaks of. And there hasn't been a program where I haven't held up this book. This is Reclaiming the Prophet. George Knight's in here, Denny 14. A lot of these great gospel Adventist scholars. And I guess what I'm realizing more so now than even 5 years ago is that this gem of Adventism, I feel like it actually is less of a gem than I once thought, because it has demonstrated clearly that when these guys speak up and share the gospel more closely to the Bible than Ellen White, at every point in Adventist history, they've never succeeded. Des Ford, Glacier View, you question the authority of Ellen White, you're gone. Right back to Canwright, all the way back. And then this year as well. Within days of these guys, the gospel Adventist guys, within days of, Larry Gerrity is on this one. He's one of the champions of a more open, broader, big tent kind of Adventism. My point is that, yes, it does exist, but whenever it tries to have a broader influence on the church, it gets squashed. And within days of this book being released, it was cancelled. And I think people like John get to breathe the good news of the gospel into whatever they're doing. And in many ways, to do that, they have to be very careful. Like he was talking about the Sabbath and the law. It's one of the reasons why he's an Adventist, because they are keepers of the law. But I don't think he would see that law keeping as salvific. So there's a very subtle difference in the gospel Adventist view of the law, the Sabbath, the keeping of it, etc. But they have never succeeded within the Adventist church, ever, to a level where its secret members can feel a sense of home and acceptance. They often say, in my church I feel accepted, etc. Yeah, well, only if you have watered down your version of it, only if everything you say doesn't threaten Ellen White in any way. And I had an interesting chat, I think it was Lloyd Grolleman the other week during my program with Ben Tavo. I can speak my mind. I can speak up my truth. That's not the point. Collectively, you can't. People like Lloyd and Ben and the 5 people I've had on the show in 5 years, that have expressed openly their more diverse views of the Adventist gospel, the ones that are employed, you know, they are that can speak freely. They are the exception to the rule. And if I could only see 20% getting a chance to speak freely, I'd probably think that's okay. But even those that speak freely, it's one off. There is no consistent effort to breathe an expanded life into the gospel Adventist realm. Only behind closed doors, one-offs here and there, or by people like Stephen Beagles who aren't employed by the church. So, yeah, there we have it. So I look back and I see the changes in me over the 5 years. I'm less impressed by gospel Adventists now. As much as I love the shining work they have done that opened my eyes, as much as I appreciate that many of them, like Alden Thompson the other week, I got a sense that he wants to remain a cultural Adventist and it's important to keep it together because of those reasons. I respect that as well. What I don't really warm to is people telling me that gospel Adventism, that the Des Ford gospel has a real hold and place in the Adventist church. Because when those who have it speak up, they are sanctioned, marginalized, suppressed, given the boot, cancelled. And if it was just one or two people that got cancelled, fine. But every single gospel Adventist who has tried to really breathe life into that message, that unique, different message that grew out of QOD, especially in the 60s and 70s, has not succeeded. Why? Because Adventism is last generation theology in motion. At its very core, the material of Ellen White, the visions of Ellen White, the testimonies of Ellen White, the core teachings, the source material, at its very core, it is last generation theology. That a people will rise up who will keep the commandments, prove Satan's claim wrong that you can't keep them, vindicate God, and show to a whole realm of angels and people on other planets that keeping the commandments can be done. And it has to be last generation because it's going to, Ellen White teaches that it's people at a certain time, post probation closing, pre-second advent, a short time period where a generation of people will demonstrate that they can keep the commandments without Jesus as an intercessor. And you can be a gospel Adventist and tell me till you go blue in the face that that's not your Adventism. Fine. Share with me your Adventism. Shout it loud and bold and proud and see what happens. You will have no impact. Why? As I said, because the mothership, the main Adventist reason for being, the main movement, at its core does not support gospel Adventism, Des Ford Adventism. Ron Kelly said it really well when I interviewed him. The new theology of gospel Adventism unravels core Adventism. So thank you for watching, and thanks, John, for saying I'm right on that point. I appreciate that. Sir Nilo points out that Ellen couldn't get her doctrinal story straight, and that's why all sides can use her. That's right. But the general gist of her teaching, as Sir Nilo would agree, is, you can support diversity, but you can't touch the pillars. Exactly right. Well said, sir. And well, look, I've really enjoyed our time today. I'm not sure what's happening tomorrow. I have written down somewhere what's going on, and we'll work it out soon. Thanks for clicking that like button, subscribe button. Really appreciate it. And if you have any loose change, please throw it my way in PayPal. A couple of dollars really helps me keep this all going. So there's the address to send a few coins. And into my open guitar case as I busk for you with my music of SDA Q&A. Music. Until tomorrow, and until our third meeting of the week, our Good News Fellowship this week is with Jimmy Giles. I cannot wait. I love when he presents. And it's really a great time for us to just gather and look at the gospel. And it's a small group, but it's a valuable and meaningful one. Until we meet again, have a beautiful rest of the day. See you later.